People say a city is known for its landmarks, but the real truth is often defined by its scars. What happens when a suitcase on a bus hides a dead body? What happens when a local singer is murdered for no reason, or when a family home is deliberately set on fire? Tonight, we are covering 8 shocking cases from Louisville, Kentucky. In these stories, the line between neighbor and killer disappears, replaced by betrayal, arson, and deadly recklessness. Case number 1 is that of Chadwick Fleming and Devone Collins. Under the oppressive gray of a late October sky in Louisville, the intersection of 18th Street and Muhammad Ali Boulevard became the staging ground for an act of profound disrespect. It is often said that the true nature of a killer is revealed not just in how they take a life, but in how they treat what remains. For the family of 34-year-old Mitchell Jackson Jr., that revelation was devastating. A bundle, discarded at the corner, was initially mistaken by residents for roadside debris. It was only when they drew closer to the torn plastic that the human features of Mitchell Jackson Jr. became visible, sparking a frantic wave of calls to 911. Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Before we begin, if you are listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mom said I wouldn't even reach 500 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show my mom that these stories matter. Please subscribe to my channel and let's breathe life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Now, let's continue. Detectives from the Louisville Metro Police Department quickly determined that this intersection was merely the endpoint of a gruesome journey. Jackson had not died on that pavement. He had been shot multiple times at a secondary location. However, the brutality of the murder was compounded by the perpetrator's chaotic attempt to erase it. Investigators identified 35-year-old Chadwick Fleming and 26-year-old Devone Collins as the architects of this nightmare. The evidence suggested a frantic, disorganized effort to dispose of the victim. Fleming had wrapped Jackson's body in sheets and garbage bags, binding him with electrical tape. In a move that displayed a chilling detachment from humanity, the body was then tied to the back of an SUV. Fleming drove through the streets of Louisville, dragging the victim behind the vehicle. It was a fatal miscalculation born of panic and cruelty. According to police reports, the makeshift bindings failed and the body detached from the vehicle mid-transit. Surveillance footage from nearby businesses captured the surreal and horrifying moment when Fleming stopped the SUV, realized his cargo was gone, and made futile attempts to reload the body before speeding away, leaving Jackson's remains exposed to the morning light. Fleming was arrested within 5 days, his tires matching the impressions left at the scene. He was charged with murder, tampering with physical evidence, and abuse of a corpse. Devone Collins, implicated as the accomplice who assisted in the concealment, faced charges of tampering and abuse of a corpse. In the courtroom, Fleming stood emotionless, hands clasped, as prosecutors detailed the unspeakably degrading nature of the crime. We often believe that darkness can hide our sins, but in this case, the very method used to conceal the truth became the beacon that exposed it. Justice, much like the body left on that cold asphalt, refuses to be dragged into the shadows. When you strip a victim of their dignity, you inadvertently strip yourself of your disguise, leaving nothing but the raw, ugly face of guilt for the world to see. Case number 2 is that of Melvin Martin Jr. In September 2020, a Greyhound bus traversed the miles between Louisville, Kentucky and Markham, Illinois. Among the passengers sat 30-year-old Melvin Martin Jr., surrounded by luggage that he guarded with an obsessive intensity. To the outside observer, he was merely a traveler returning to his family. In reality, he was a mobile tomb, carrying the dismembered remains of his girlfriend, 31-year-old LaDondra Ellington. LaDondra was known in her community for her radiant kindness and her volunteer work at a local church shelter. That light was extinguished inside the couple's shared home, where a domestic assault escalated into a crime of unfathomable grotesquerie. After ending her life, Martin did not flee in panic. Instead, he spent days dismantling her body with chilling precision. He separated her torso, organs, and head, wrapping them in plastic and packing them into suitcases. He then boarded public transportation, sitting amidst unsuspecting strangers with the physical evidence of his brutality at his feet. Upon arriving at his mother's home in Illinois, his behavior immediately raised alarms. He refused to let family members near his bags, carrying them from room to room and asking for clothes, despite having luggage full of what they assumed were his belongings. But it was the smell, a distinct putrid odor of decay, that ultimately betrayed him. 4 days after his arrival, Martin left to visit a public library. Seized by suspicion and the overpowering stench, a relative unzipped one of the bags. The horror that followed is difficult to articulate. A human head rolled out, confirming the family's worst fears. His mother immediately dialed 911. When Illinois police arrived, they found multiple bags containing LaDondra's severed remains. Martin was arrested at the library without incident. During interrogation, he offered a rationale that chilled detectives to the bone. He claimed he transported the remains because he still wanted to be with at least part of her. Following his confession, Louisville detectives located the rest of LaDondra's body in Bingham Park. Martin was extradited to Kentucky and charged with murder and abuse of a corpse. His bond was set at $500,000 as the judge labeled him a profound danger to the community. This case forces us to confront the terrifying distortion of attachment. Martin's actions were not born of love, but of a pathological need for possession that transcended even death. True affection nurtures life. Obsession merely harvests it, believing that ownership is a substitute for a human soul. Case number 3 is that of Lazaro Pozo Elias. A quiet Sunday in August 2019 was meant to be a day of leisure at Louisville Seneca Park, a sanctuary for families and golfers seeking respite. But for Christopher Scholes, a beloved father and athletic director, and his friend Brian Hovekamp, the tranquility was shattered by a red Mustang tearing through the landscape like a weapon. Behind the wheel sat 32-year-old Lazaro Pozo Elias. He had spent the hours prior consuming alcohol, later admitting to police that he had finished a bottle of Hennessy. His blood alcohol content was more than double the legal limit, transforming his vehicle into an unguided missile. As Pozo Elias sped through a 25 mph zone, he approached an intersection where Scholes and Hovekamp were crossing in a golf cart. The collision was inevitable and brutal. The impact threw Scholes from the cart and left Hovekamp critically injured. While bystanders rushed to aid the dying man, Pozo Elias's priority was self-preservation. Witnesses reported that he stumbled from the wreckage, reeking of alcohol, and attempted to flee the scene before citizens physically intervened to hold him until law enforcement arrived. The legal battle that followed centered on the definition of intent. The defense attempted to argue that the crash was a tragic accident, citing poor road signage and claiming a head injury impaired Pozo Elias's judgment during the field sobriety test. However, the data told a damning story. The Mustang's computer revealed he was traveling at speeds vastly exceeding the limit, displaying a manifest indifference to the value of human life. This was not merely negligence, it was depravity. In August 2021, a jury returned a guilty verdict on all counts, including murder and first-degree assault. The judge sentenced Pozo Elias to 30 years in prison, 20 years for the murder of Christopher Scholes, and a consecutive 10 years for the assault on Hovekamp. During sentencing, Scholes' widow stood before the court, stating that this was not about revenge, but responsibility. This case serves as a grim reminder that violence does not always require a gun or a knife. A vehicle controlled by an impaired mind is as lethal as any firearm. When a driver chooses to drink and speed, they are no longer operating a machine. They are loading a chamber. The tragedy is that the person pulling the trigger rarely pays the price alone. It is the innocent crossing the street on a sunny afternoon who ultimately absorb the impact. Case number 4 is that of Quintez Omar Brown. In Louisville, a city accustomed to political discourse, the line between activism and extremism blurred violently on Valentine's Day, 2022. The perpetrator was 24-year-old Quintez Omar Brown, a figure previously celebrated for his columns advocating for racial justice and, ironically, gun control. He was a voice for the community, a promising young leader whose sudden descent into violence shocked the city. The betrayal here was not just against a specific victim, but against the very principles Brown publicly championed. On that morning, Brown entered the Butchertown Market campaign headquarters of Craig Greenberg, a Democratic mayoral candidate. Greenberg and 4 staff members were gathered for a routine meeting when Brown walked in. He offered a brief greeting, then produced a 9mm Glock and opened fire. The office transformed instantly into a kill box. Bullets tore through the walls, and one round grazed Greenberg's sweater, missing his torso by mere millimeters. In the chaos, staff members managed to slam the door and barricade themselves with desks, saving their lives as Brown fled the scene. Police arrested Brown less than 10 minutes later, finding a loaded handgun and extra ammunition in his pocket. The investigation revealed chilling premeditation. Federal prosecutors alleged Brown had visited Greenberg's home the previous day and had researched the candidate's family online. However, the narrative took a complex turn when his defense attorney revealed that Brown had been in the throes of a severe psychotic episode, having not slept for days. The case ignited a firestorm of controversy when a local bail fund posted Brown's $100,000 bond just 2 days after the shooting, allowing him to return home on an ankle monitor. The move drew national condemnation, with Greenberg stating it was impossible to believe the justice system could be so broken. The legal process ultimately balanced the reality of Brown's mental illness against the undeniable intent of his actions. In January 2025, Brown pleaded guilty to federal charges, including interfering in a protected political campaign, receiving a sentence of 17.5 years. He later accepted a concurrent 10-year state sentence. The judge acknowledged his mental struggles, but affirmed that mental health cannot absolve the endangering of lives. This case serves as a tragic intersection of failed systems and lost potential. When the messenger picks up the weapon, the message is forever lost. It reminds us that ideology, no matter how noble, can curdle into violence if the mind holding it begins to fracture. Case number 5 is that of Lorenzo D. Johnson. On the night of September 23, 2020, the streets of downtown Louisville were already a powder keg. The city was reeling from the grand jury's decision regarding the death of Breonna Taylor, and thousands had gathered to voice their collective grief and rage. The atmosphere was thick with tension, but for the most part, the purpose was protest, not combat. That distinction was obliterated by 26-year-old Lorenzo D. Johnson. In the midst of a movement calling for accountability, Johnson chose to introduce lethal anarchy, turning a plea for justice into a crime scene. As police units lined Broadway and Brook Street to contain the unrest, Johnson positioned himself near the crowd. Without warning, the sharp crack of gunfire cut through the chants. Witnesses reported hearing 14 rapid shots. The bullets were indiscriminate, tearing through the air with zero regard for who stood in their path. 2 Louisville Metro police officers, Major Aubrey Gregory and Officer Robinson Desroches, were struck. Gregory took a bullet to the hip, while Desroches was hit in the abdomen, an injury that would require emergency surgery. The panic that ensued was absolute. Protesters and police alike scrambled for cover as the shooter vanished into the chaotic night. The turn in the case came swiftly, aided by the very citizens who had gathered for the protest. Amidst the confusion, a witness directed officers toward a man fleeing toward a nearby gas station. Police apprehended Johnson minutes later, finding a handgun in his possession. Ballistics subsequently confirmed it was the weapon used in the attack. Johnson admitted to firing not just at the injured officers, but at the general vicinity of law enforcement, displaying what prosecutors termed an extreme indifference to the value of human life. Johnson was initially charged with assault and multiple counts of wanton endangerment, reflecting the dozens of lives he jeopardized in those few seconds. In March 2022, he pleaded guilty to 2 counts of assault and 33 counts of wanton endangerment. He was sentenced to 13.5 years in prison. The sentence drew sharp criticism from police advocacy groups who felt the punishment did not match the intent of shooting an officer. This case highlights a tragic irony of civil unrest. The legitimate grievances of a community can be hijacked in an instant by the violent impulses of a single individual. When the gun is fired, the message of the movement is often drowned out by the ringing in our ears. Johnson's actions did not advance the cause of justice. They merely added more victims to a city already overflowing with them. True accountability cannot exist where chaos reigns, and violence, regardless of its motivation, only ever begets more silence. Case number 6 is that of Alicia McFadden. On the evening of November 20th, 2021, the traffic on Louisville's Westport Road was subjected to a terrifying prelude. Before the tragedy occurred, it was predicted. Multiple calls flooded the 911 dispatch center, reporting a silver vehicle weaving violently through lanes, narrowly missing other cars and speeding with reckless abandon. One caller, watching the vehicle swerve, stated with chilling prescience, "She's going to kill somebody." The driver was 21-year-old Alicia McFadden, and minutes later, that prophecy became a reality. The victims of this erratic rampage were George and Margaret Herbig, aged 82 and 76. A couple in the twilight of their lives, they were executing a routine left turn from Ambridge Drive when McFadden's car, traveling at excessive speed, plowed into their SUV. The physics of the crash were devastating. The impact crushed the Herbig's vehicle, deploying airbags and shattering glass. Despite the safety measures, the couple was found lifeless inside, still strapped into their seats. They never stood a chance against the momentum of McFadden's negligence. When first responders arrived, they found McFadden dazed but alive. The cause of the carnage was immediately apparent. An open bottle of vodka sat in the center console, half empty, a silent testament to the decisions made prior to the collision. Officers noted the overwhelming scent of alcohol, and subsequent toxicology results revealed a blood alcohol content of 210, nearly 3 times the legal limit in Kentucky. She had been operating a heavy machine while completely incapacitated, turning a vehicle into a weapon of indiscriminate destruction. McFadden was initially charged with murder, facing a potential life sentence. However, the legal proceedings culminated in a plea agreement. In June 2023, she pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree manslaughter and DUI. The courtroom was heavy with the grief of the Herbig family as McFadden, clutching tissues, accepted a sentence of 16 years. The tragedy of this case lies in its preventability. This was not a mechanical failure or a sudden medical emergency. It was a choice. The decision to drink and drive is often treated as a mistake, but when the result is the obliteration of 2 lives, it reveals itself as an act of violence. George and Margaret Herbig survived decades of life together, only to have their timeline severed by a stranger's fleeting desire for intoxication. It serves as a brutal reminder that the road is a shared trust, and when one person breaks that trust, others pay the price with their lives. For case number 8 is that of John Kennedy Jr. It is a cruel paradox when a man who dedicates his life to harmony meets an end defined by violent discord. Jeremiah Buckner, known professionally as Echo, was a co-founder of the a cappella group Lincoln Bridge. He was a figure of local renown in Louisville, having performed on America's Got Talent, where he used his voice to bridge cultural and social divides. But on a cold afternoon in January 2023, that voice was permanently silenced, not by a grand tragedy, but by a petty, opportunistic crime. On January 3rd, Buckner was working as a rideshare driver, a common side job for artists supporting their craft. He was transporting a passenger to the 600 block of Village West Drive to complete a transaction involving the sale of items. What Buckner likely viewed as a routine drop-off was, in reality, a trap. As the vehicle idled, a figure approached. This was 20-year-old John Kennedy Jr. Surveillance footage would later capture the ambush. Kennedy walked up to the car and trained a gun on the passenger in an apparent robbery attempt. The situation disintegrated in seconds. The passenger, realizing the danger, bolted from the vehicle and ran. Buckner, an innocent third party caught in the crossfire of a street dispute, attempted to do the same. He opened his door to flee the kill zone, but as he scrambled away, Kennedy fired multiple rounds. Buckner was struck in the back, a cowardly shot that felled him instantly. While Kennedy and the intended target vanished into the neighborhood, Buckner was left to die on the pavement beside his car. When police arrived, the man who had sung for peace was pronounced dead at the scene. For over a year, the case remained an open wound for the community. It wasn't until January 2024 that homicide detectives, utilizing video evidence and witness testimony, arrested John Kennedy Jr. He was charged with murder and first-degree robbery. During interrogation, police stated that Kennedy admitted to being present at the scene. At his arraignment, he stood in an orange jumpsuit, his expression blank, as a judge set his bond at $500,000. The death of Jeremiah Buckner serves as a harrowing indictment of random violence. He was not a combatant, he was merely a driver, a father, and a unifier. His death reinforces the terrifying reality that in a world awash with firearms, one does not need to be involved in a crime to become its primary victim. Kennedy's decision to pull the trigger did not just end a life. It stole a melody from a city that desperately needed it, proving that while it takes a lifetime to build a legacy, it takes only a second of senseless rage to destroy it.